So a couple of things about working with paint. We've talked a little bit in class about the strengths of paint. And so clearly I have two colors here. This one is brighter, so it would be considered more intense. And this one is darker, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's less intense. And so when you're mixing colors, it's good to know the difference between the strength of a color. Because as you guys did in class with that little experiment, you saw that when you mixed even amounts of a color, you don't necessarily get a color that's halfway between the two. So yellow is very easily influenced, very easily overcome. So I'm just going to pour out some yellow onto my palette. And then I'm going to use my paintbrush to get some blue. So what I'm going to mix today is my secondary color green, which is going to go right here. And in order to make that, I know I'm not going to need anywhere near as much blue as yellow. So that's just a teeny bit of blue, if you can see how small that is. And I'm going to mix it in to the edge of my yellow. I try to encourage people to start like at the edge of a color when they're mixing, because you never know, how much you're going to need. I'm going to need enough to do 2 or 3 coats on this space, but when I'm working with colors that are 2 different strengths, it's important to go slow. So now I need to clean my yellow brush, dry it off, and I'm going to pull out some more blue. I think it would just be easier for me to put like a blob of blue on my palette, so I'm going to do that. So now I'm going to take a little more blue, because this green, it's a green, but it's clearly not halfway between those 2 colors, because that blue is so dark. Now I have to apologize to Group 1C students, because the blue that I gave you is not going to make a pretty green. It is Blick blue, and it is not as nice a mixing blue as the Crayola blue is. So Group 2 students, you got the pretty blue. I'm sorry, Group 1 students. If you really don't like it, when you're in class next week, you can swap it out for another one. So there, I've got a green, right? And so a lot of you are going, why doesn't she paint it already? It's green. And the trick is that we need to see it compared to the other 2 colors. So when I do this in class with students, I use this piece of paper. We call them test strips. And we paint it on the edge, and then we hold it over the blue. And sometimes I squint my eyes and look at it, and then hold it over the yellow. See how it's quite a bit darker than the yellow? And it's a little bit lighter than the blue. But it's a little hard to tell, because you can see around the edges it's drying lighter. So if this paint were dry, we would have a truer sense of whether it's the right color. And it is significantly darker than the yellow. If you hold it like this, it doesn't, for me, I can't really tell doing that. So I like to hold it first over the blue and then over the yellow. And I think it looks kind of cool. I don't know if it's going to be the right color, but since I'm doing 3 coats, I'm going to paint it down. Now I can kind of tell, now that I'm getting it on here already, that it's not going to be the right color. And I wish I had my square tip brush for this. The reason I gave you guys square tip brushes was to get into those corners. So I'm going to paint it down, and probably by the time I get to the end of this shape, it will be almost dry, and I'll start mixing the proper color. So if you have your paints in front of you, go ahead and start to, just choose 2 of the colors, and on a piece of scrap paper. If you have your wheel and your center is done, you can do this on the wheel. It doesn't matter to me, but if you want to just do it on a piece of scrap paper for now to get your points, you can do that too. And then I'll show you like the difference, how I check to see once it's dry if it's the right color. So they need to be opaque, meaning solid and not see-through, which is why we do 2 or 3 coats of the color. And you do get points for that. if you look at the rubric on each of the, you know, the primary page, then the secondary page, you'll see that you get points for it being opaque. And what I like to do is take my hands and cover everything but the two colors in the secondary I'm looking at. And I'm looking to see, is there as much difference between here and here as there is between there and there? And that looks pretty good because it's significantly lighter than this, but significantly darker than that. But just looking at this color, it might not look like like a real orange. It looks a little bit more to me like a yellow orange in a way. And the same with this. This is, if you went to a hardware store to pick paints for your bedroom wall, you probably wouldn't pull this out as a purple. In fact, like the shirt that I'm wearing is more, you know, it's more violet, it's more purple. But this is halfway between these two colors. So what do you guys think? Think this needs to be a little more blue? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna put some blue in here and mix it up. And that is a very beautiful color. However, I don't know if it's the right one. So again, I'm gonna put it on my test strip. And I put it fairly thickly on the test strip to simulate having it be, you know, 3 coats. But again, keeping in mind that this is wet. So now it looks really close to the darkness of the blue, but it's much darker than the yellow. So I think I might have gone too far. I might have put too much blue. And the tendency is to want to put more yellow into that color, you know, to lighten it back up again. That's the natural thing that everybody wants to do. But I would challenge you not to do that, because if you're mixing up a large amount of paint, then you could end up using all the rest of your yellow trying to get that back to the right color. So instead what you do is take what you have on your brush and mix it into a fresh area of the yellow and try to bring it back a little closer to what you want. So I want it a little darker than that one I had a minute ago. And I'm not putting yellow into the wrong color because yellow is too wimpy. It'll take a lot of your time, a lot of your materials, and a lot of your energy. So instead of going back to the blue, I'm taking this green. And that will more slowly darken it up. And then when I get something that's a little closer, I'll paint another coat. It's amazing how little paint it takes to change a color. And then I'll test it. And I know when it dries, it's going to look a lot different. So I'd be happy to give you extra credit for using test strips if you want to take a picture of them and upload them with your photos of your wheels. All right, any questions? Questions, anyone? I'm kind of rushing this a little bit just to get the second coat on. It's not completely dry underneath, but I really want to get a second color on. So that's how you do color mixing. Or at least that's how I'd like you to try to do color mixing. So for this synchronous session, you'll get 5 points for attending and 5 points for uploading a picture of some colors that you have mixed. And if you can put like the original colors next to them. So if you're mixing yellow and blue and you come up with a green you think is halfway, you know, put down the yellow and the blue so I can tell. All right, and that's all I have for you today.
I have a question.
Yes.
How many colors should we mix together? Should we do 2 or should we just do 1?
For today or for the assignment?
For today.
For today, you can just mix 2 colors to get a third. Yep, that'd be fine. And like I said, if you have your wheel, if the center of your wheel is done and you think the color is right to go on here, go ahead and do it right on your wheel. You don't have to do it on a piece of scrap paper. I don't want to make more work for you.
Thank you.
Sure. So this is a teeny bit darker, teeny bit more blue. And you may have noticed working with these paints that they flatten down as they dry. So you don't really have to go over them a whole lot. Whoops, I just went over the line. But sometimes when you do go over them too much, you'll brush up the color that's underneath. Oh, look, that's a little more green. Is there anybody who doesn't have their paints? I know I've had at least one person who was absent and didn't have paints.
Yeah.
So if you don't, oops, sorry.